We're very pleased to be joined by Tim Mooney, a third generation family member who leads the iconic Fire Island Ferries. Can you start us off just by discussing yourself? And by that I mean, when did you realize that yours would be a life and a career in maritime?
Well, that's a very good question because it didn't start there. When I was of working age, when I was 14, 15, 16, I was sailing and at a Bayshore Yacht Club. And so I was a sailing instructor and I raced on weekends. And then when I was 16, my father said, "Well, when are you coming down to work?" I said, "Well, I want to sail on weekends." And he said, "Well, you can't do that." So I said, okay, then I'm going to go. And I worked for a company, Hard Sails, made sails in Islip, and did that for my high school career, and then went off to college and was up in New England for till 2004 when I my father called and said, "Hey, I'm looking to go to Florida more and play some golf and." You interested in coming to join the company?" And I said, "Yeah, let's see if we can make that work." And we did. So I've been here since 2004, involved in the business. And before that, my father was running the show, and I have two of our kids are in the business now. I got two in and two out. So I got a 50-50 here. So I'm pretty happy that I have an exit strategy and a continuation here that we can look forward to.
Tim, I'm sure many watching this know the Fire Island Ferries name, but can you give us a by the numbers look at Fire Island Ferries today?
Fire Island Ferries started running in 1948. And since then, we've acquired a couple of the other local ferry companies as people went to retire and they didn't have an exit strategy with any family following up. So we ended up with actually two other ferry companies, three other ferry companies. We acquired in the one in the 50 and another in the 80s and then another one in the 80s. So we ended up, handling the whole west end of Fire Island. And, with that, of course, the fleet grew and our ridership grew as time passed. And then, right now we handle the 8 communities on the west end of Fire Island with the ferries. We also have the water taxi business, which covers the entire length of Fire Island, actually goes out to Captree and takes people out for the fishing boats. And we also have a marine services division, which is doing tug and barge work, dock building. Uh, some of that's for ourselves, but a lot of it's for outside interests. And we also have 10 acres of property here in the Bayshore terminals, and we park cars. With the no cars on Fire Island scenario, one of the best things we can do is park a lot of cars, which we do. And so right now the fleet, all in, we have about 40 pieces of floating equipment between ferries, water taxis, tugs, and barges. We have about 40 pieces of equipment. In the summer, we get all in with all of our employees, we get to about 350 employees during the summer months. And, all shifts, everything from valet parkers to ticket staff to, captains and crew. We move right around 1 million people a year, with the combination of the water taxis and the ferries. And we're right in that ballpark. And it's been pretty consistent for, we've fully recovered from the COVID years, so we're back to where we were. Very pleased about that. And our business is driven by the weather. Good weather, good business; bad weather, bad business. So it's a simple formula, but hard to execute. Um, but we've been, recently we've been doing a repowering effort with the fleet. So we've been swapping out some old Detroit diesels and putting in new John Deere engines, which has been a good opportunity for us. We're very happy with the results of that, and these boats are going to be good for an extended period of time. So I'm very happy about that.
Obviously, repowering the fleet is a big investment. It's a big decision. What were the drivers for those specific units?
Well, one of the big drivers, it's American made, and I was, wanted to stay in that category. They also at the time had the engine about the size, not about exactly the size that we needed to replace either the Detroit 1271s or the old Detroit or MTU Series 60s, and they were pretty much a plug and play for us. And we could use the controls and the transmissions and the like on these engines, and so it was a fairly straightforward upgrade for us. And they're tier three engines, they're EPA tier three, so they're burning a lot cleaner and giving us some fuel efficiency as well. So we're very happy about that. But the big driver was I was only looking at American made engines at that point.
When you look at your fleet cumulatively, and really I'm just kind of looking at the passenger vessels here, you know, can you give me some insights on the size? Or you gave me the size, but the age, and I guess aside from the repowering, where do you see your primary areas for investments or priorities in 2026 and beyond?
Well, the class of boats that we have that we build are 85 foot, 22 feet wide. They draw about 3.5, 4 feet of water, depending on the loads that we have. As you know, we have very thin water here in the Great South Bay. So we have to be very cognizant of that and very efficient, hull forms that we are using. They're more or less a copy of the World War II PT boat hull. And, we're burning with a fully laden boat, we're burning about 38 gallons an hour. So, and they're triple screw boats. So we have, all the boats are three engines. Part of that's by design. So if we lose an engine, we're still very maneuverable and can always make it back to port. Um, where our plans, I don't have any plans to build new boats at this point. We're doing the repowering. The boats are in great shape. We've sold some of our older steel boats. Kenny Stein out in Sayville has two of them right now. We sold one up to Boston Harbor Cruises, and we still have one steel hull left here that we use as a freight boat and a passenger boat. But right now that's our focus is really to do the repowers. You had asked one of your questions was who was building boats for us. Blount up in Warren, Rhode Island, they've built 10 boats for us. We've had Gladding Hearn built a boat for us over in Somerset. Director has built a boat for us when it was up in Bridgeport. Gulf Craft down in Louisiana built 4 boats for us. We're getting our the water taxis. We've had a couple of boats that were Munson hulls that we've converted into water taxis. We had a couple of catamaran water taxis that were built up in Lyman Morris in Maine, and they did a good job. Tugs we've been building down in Deltaville, Virginia at Miller Marine, and we've had
Mhm.
really good luck with all of these folks. Everybody has built a great boat for us. And I actually joked with the Blount people. I said, part of your problem is you build boats that are too good. So they're around for 30 or 40 years and we can repower them and get another 10, 20 years out of them. And, which is a compliment to them. But, these vessels the matter of fact, the Fire Island Miss, which is one of the steel hull ferries, was built in 76 and she's still running strong. One of our freight boats was built in 74. So they've been around a long time and, they've been pulling their weight and, if it ain't broke, don't break it.
Let's turn the attention to the routes that you run. And again, you said it perfectly, thin water in the Great South Bay. In fact, I know the waters very well, and if you don't know the waters, you can get in some big trouble. So when you look at the routes that you run, can you discuss the general characteristics and really how your boats or teams are outfitted to navigate safely and efficiently?
Well, it's really progressed over the years. I'm old enough to remember before radar and, when you had stopwatches and compass bearings. And, you know, my father used to yell at my brother and I all the time because he'd give us the stopwatch to work while he was doing runs when we were little kids. And we'd be pushing the stopwatch. We weren't keeping time for him and stuff. And he goes, "Oh, how much time, how much time are we? Oh, I don't know, Dad." And he goes, "Ah." So my brother and I used to but that's where it started, back in the day. Um, and then, with the advent of radar, things improved quite a bit. But the channels are pretty unforgiving. And the good news, the one thing I'll take thin water with no rocks as opposed to deep water with rocks. So we run aground, we may bend a wheel or bend a rudder or something, but we're not putting a hole in the boat. And we're very grateful for that. But with the advent of, we had Loran on the boats for a while, and then we went to the GPS. And since we've done that, it's made a big difference in being able to run your routes. And we've got boats going east way and west way around, east and west Fire Island. And, it's really been a godsend to get the GPS systems on there. We also installed GPS trackers on all the boats, not AIS, but a private scenario. And we have them on the water taxis and the ferries. And we have some geo fence areas, that the guys need to keep out of, and speed alerts. And so, we're keeping an eye on things. And it's not for the faint of heart. If you're going at night or in the fog, you really need to know what you're doing. And our apprenticeship program here for captains is about, depending on how much, about a year and a half. So even after you get your license, you don't get a boat for quite an extended period of time. And then the first run, usually the inaugural run is Atlantique. So when captains go solo, it's usually Atlantique that they're assigned to. So
That's a
it's
that's a
pretty
that's
good.
a nice big basin to turn around in.
Yeah, big basin, and the schedule isn't tight.
Yeah.
They can take their time, and you know it's very manageable from that perspective. And the kids do a great job. All of our captains on the ferries are homegrown.
Looking at the bookends of your career, I mean, is there one technology that you can look at or that you can talk about, or technology evolution that really has helped to make your boats more efficient and more safe?
Oh, that's a very good question. I really think the GPS is significant, whether the GPS is on your phone or on your Garmin on the dashboard or whatever. The GPS has really made a substantial difference in the ability to navigate safely.
When you look at the entirety of your operation, is labor an issue? And I guess the second part of that question is, what do you count as the best way to find and retain the people you want and need?
You know, I we have these discussions at PVA all the time, and we do not have a problem with labor.
Mhm.
Never have. It's a great summer job. We have that high demand for a very short period of time. And I think one of our biggest advantages is everybody's home every night. So we're not doing, what they're doing over in Bridgeport or up in Orient or stuff. Everybody's home every night. So we can hire 16 and 17 and 18-year olds, and that's a good portion. About two-thirds of our workforce in the summer is under 24. So, captains are, we have a lot of young captains that, worked here during high school, got their captain's license, and while they're going to college and before they get a job, they're here for the summer. And they're smart, they work hard, we've got binders and binders of applications for summer work. So we're very, very fortunate. And typically we tap into a good family. When's your brother 16 or when's your sister 16? And we find that the other thing is good kids have good friends. So if
Yeah.
we tap into a kid and we say, "Hey, you got any of your buddies looking for work or whatever?" And we actually, for the ferry side and even for parking, we valet cars here on the Seaview Ocean Bay Park Terminal here at the Ocean Beach Terminal. And you have to have responsible kids that are out there, moving these cars around. And I think one of the things I like the most about this job is watching the kids grow. When they come in at 16 years old and they're staring at their feet the first couple of days and don't want to talk to anybody, and then within a couple of weeks they are in it. They have to communicate with people, and I think that's an important value lesson that we can teach here at Fire Island Ferries is that you got to be able to communicate with an adult and reason with an adult. And that's, and a lot of kids don't get that opportunity, and certain jobs you don't get to interface with the general public like we do.
Yeah, I just want to turn to regulatory issues. So, when you look at regulatory issues coming down to passenger vessel operators, can you point out specifically what you see in the coming year that are a priority, and I guess what you see potentially impacting your operations the most?
That's a good question. Well, we're very fortunate in the fact that we've been involved with PVA, since its inception, pretty much. Between my father and then Dave Anderson, it plays a big role in the PVA aspect and the interface with the Coast Guard. So we try, I think the strength of the PVA is trying to head some of these things off, or I guess normalize some of the requirements that are being thought of to come out to the field. Now the new hot topic is cyber security. And the Coast Guard just has, I just took my cyber security test yesterday, and a lot of it is just good general practice, regardless of whether it's maritime or not. But I think in many cases our vessels are pretty simple, and especially for cyber, where I don't have retail on the boat, and I'm not selling anything on the boat. The boat are nobody can hack in. If you can figure out how to hack into a 1271, I'll be pretty impressed. But we're pretty fortunate but that seems to be the hot topic. They had the pollution stuff, the vessel general permit that they were doing a few years ago that you have to keep renewing. And some of these things are just, impractical, based on scale. Things that work on a big ship and tugs and ocean going vessels and organizations with big staffs don't necessarily translate down into our operation, or even smaller operations where people, there's a lot of people that just have one dinner boat, and that's how they make a living. And some of the requirements that are coming down are, I mean, we've done a bunch of things with active shooter training at PVA, which is, I thought it was be a little concerning for the kids. And they said, "Nah, we do that in school all the time." And I'm going, "You do?" My kids weren't in school at that point, but oh yeah, we do. Yeah, we do this active shooter training and we do the whole thing. So they didn't think anything of it. And I was all nervous that it would scare kids away. And, it's just part of life now for them.
You just, you
But
just,
I
you
think,
just,
it'll be interesting to see where they take this, the whole cybersecurity scenario that they're working with, from the Coast Guard. Different events have different impacts on regulations. So, the Conception fire out on the West Coast, which was awful, that had a profound impact on, things with the Coast Guard, as it should, and I don't have a problem with that. Safety is the number one thing, and and most of the time the Coast Guard is able to temper some of these things with reality, and they know their fleet, and I think that's very important is they're not shooting from the hip. They've been out in the field for a long time, a lot of these guys, and they know what we're up against. So they represent us very well. So I'm very pleased with the relationship. You know, they're just a function of what the legislation says they have to do. So, and they try to give us an opportunity to mitigate some of those challenges, which we've been able to do. But, everything from inflatable, life-saving equipment to, um, all of the fire prevention and fire suppression systems that are on board. Those are all good things, and it keeps people safe. I mean, we're fortunate enough that since 1948, we've never put people in the water. So, at least
That is
at least they were never directed to go in the water. Yeah, well, you've read the stories about people jumping off the boat, but that wasn't our call.
yes. I think the saying goes, "You can't fix stupid." But hey, I digress on
We
that.
use that term. We use that term every once in a while.
Going back to looking holistically at your organization, I'm sure, like you said, you got a lot of boats. I know how much it takes to maintain a boat, let alone a fleet. But when you look, or you consider your greatest challenges to running an efficient, safe, and profitable ferry operation, what are those challenges?
Well, I think well, one of the challenges was minimum wage going up, and it ratcheted up very quickly, and that has a cascade effect on the rest of the staffing because you can't be bringing a rookie in and have the same price for somebody that's been here for 3 years, and that really had a big impact on payroll. And we have staffing levels we have to adhere to with the Coast Guard, and we don't have an option of saying, well, don't come in today because, you know,
Yeah.
we don't need you today or whatever. So that had a big impact on us, and that changed the payroll profile of the company quite significantly. The other thing is healthcare, coverage for the staff and, health insurance, has gone up dramatically. And, we're still a dinosaur with this, but we pay 100% of our employees medical coverage.
Wow.
So, and that's how we try to keep people. We have some incentives, some things that make it very convenient for people to be able to stay here. Insurance in general for your hull and P&I and trying to get waterfront property insurance now is next to impossible. And we keep moving around and trying to get, coverage for the property side of things. The hull, the boats, the staff, that's been pretty straightforward. That's not as concerning as it has been for the property side of things. So those expenses keep going up, dramatically year over year. Fuel has been pretty stable. I'm pretty happy. I hedged for next summer already, or this summer now. And we have a good price for our fuel consumption for the course of the summer. So that's something I can put a stake in the ground and say, okay, here's where this is going to be. Our biggest variable is weather. You know, we have 3 holidays that we need to get in over the course of the summer. And this past year, the 4th of July and Labor Day were both great weekends. Memorial Day wasn't that great, but we had our best day in history on the 4th of July this past summer, single best day where we moved 26,000 people in a day. And it was great. It was so much fun to do that. But so the weather is a big factor. We're one more big storm away from, losing more houses over there or, people getting discouraged or whatever the case may be. So, let alone, the ferry terminal going underwater and all the other stuff that goes along with that. So those are the challenges that, most of them are unmanageable. I can't, you know, the payroll thing was beyond our control, and the insurance side of things, the weather. So, those are the things that keep me up at night is things that I don't have control over. I know I have good captains, I know I have good equipment, and people making good decisions for me, or for us, I should say. And, so that part of the business I'm very comfortable with. It's these variables that I can't control that that make me nervous.
Tim, just really one more question. Is there anything new for Fire Island Ferries in 2026?
Um, no, not really. I think we're gonna be doing some more digital marketing. We're expanding our breadth in that direction and hoping that we can capture some more ridership through that. We're going to continue to our marine services business is the one that's been that's a fairly new business for us, and it's been expanding pretty well. And keeping our ear to the ground between the different dredging projects and waterfront projects that take place here on the South Shore and in toward the city. We've been very involved with that. We have a couple of tugs out in East Rockaway now, and over at Jones, and out east in Mauritius, and out in Smiths Point. And that's been a growing part of our business, and so we'll be focusing on continuing that. But we're really looking to spread the word for Fire Island, and it's amazing how many people here on Long Island and right next door have never been to Fire Island. They come down here and you can tell the rookies because they're not sure what to do, and you say, "Oh, is this your first time?" And they go, "Yeah, where do you live?" "Oh, I live in North Bayshore." "And you haven't been here yet?"
Even as my wife and I look to other places to potentially move, it's like this is a tough
Hard
litmus
to
test
beat.
to live up to.
And I tell people all the time, if you're flying through the city in our international in interferry, and I said, stop in. We've had a bunch of people that have swung in to come, and
Yeah,
we're an hour train ride from
nothing.
JFK. They can come
Yeah.
out and spend a couple of days, and they're all going, this is amazing. I never, here we are, our proximity to New York City, and you're on a completely different scale when you come out to Fire Island.